Finks, as we call them. I'm an Ypsilanti Fink still, which is where the Dexter Finks were from originally. Not really the red Fink. So, with that said, I want to quickly say, please do pay attention to the rules which are posted on the tripods here and on the back of all the question and answer sheets. Somebody asked me if I'm the one who's picking and choosing whether your question is going to be read. I can tell you I'm not setting any questions aside. Every question will be read to the extent that every question can be done in the next hour. So when I'm picking up a question, I'm putting it into a category, and we're trying not to be repetitive in asking the same kind of question time after time. And there are some I've seen that are exact duplicates, so we're probably only going to ask one version of each of those. But the congressman's not going to is going to answer every question that we ask in the next hour. So with that said, Congressman Tim Walker, come on in.
Well, thank you, and thanks to the Dexter school system for their willingness to give us a fine facility to use, and with air conditioning. Though outside right now, Don, I think he would say to be back in Michigan, be in Michigan, just secure Michigan. Don Lizinski, glad to have her with us. I always appreciate the fact that our state reps and senators take active involvement in the life of their districts, life of their citizens, and Don and I have talked about the fact that the federal government has taken too much control away from the states and the local communities. It was originally designed that the federal government was kind of an afterthought to a great degree. Had a very limited responsibility scope because they received their authority and the responsibility from the states, not the other way around. Sadly, it's changed, and I would love to see it promote an effort to move back so that Don and her colleagues, our governor, and then the local communities, leadership, would be making major decisions that deal with your lives. But that's not going to happen overnight. And that's why we have town hall meetings like this where we get the opportunity to hear from you your concerns. And it's good to see some of you are taking an active involvement and are even doing 2 days like me. Town hall is your second town hall meeting of the day already as well. So, not wanting to take any more time away from it, so we can get through that set of cards, and then when we get through that set of cards, we'll open it up for questions and comment directly from you. Let's get on with it, Andrew.
Okay, to begin with, Congressman, we got several examples of this question or variations on it. This is from, do you want me to read the names out?
Read each of the names.
Okay,
yes.
So this is from Carolyn Kinsler. We also have the same question coming from Tanya Tassin, Karen, I'm sorry if I get your name wrong, Flahy is my best guess, Carol Westfall, Kathleen Stevenson. That's it so far. Your Michigan Republican colleague, Justin Amash, holds all his town halls in the evenings. If, as you say, listening to our input is important, listening to our input on important issues facing our community and country is so crucial, then why don't you hold your coffee hours at times that are more accessible to your constituents?
Well, so far we've not had real evidence that the multiple times we do, morning, afternoon, evening, Saturday, we try to cross the bases. Justin does only evenings. I think he missed some people that could only come in the mornings, some that come in afternoons. When I worked at the steel mills, I remember I worked a swing shift, all 3 shifts at times. So we know that there's flexibility. I do know that I hold more live town halls than all but 9 other members of the entire Congress, House and Senate. And that includes Justin Amash. So we're going to keep doing that, try to go to town halls at all times and all communities. We've hit every single town hall or every single county in my district, the 7 counties thus far. We're going back around now, hitting other communities. The
this week we will have hit 5 separate communities as well. Was that your question?
No.
No, but it's only, we're gonna only stick with the people who asked the question. It was your question, okay?
So when can we anticipate an evening one? Because we've been watching for months and everything has been pretty much during the work week with an occasional weekend sprung on us at the last minute.
Well, you will see. It's coming to a community near you. And we will be scheduling those for the first 100 days. As you may have heard in the media, especially local media, maybe not the national media, but we had just nonstop sessions. We didn't have our normal 1 week back in the district every 4th week, so we could do inter-district work period and have more latitude for doing multiple meetings. We're back on that schedule now, and that's why you're seeing the opportunity for more, and we'll keep doing it that way. Next question.
Congressman, the next question here is from Heather Jones. Drug abuse has impacted my home, and that is embarrassing to admit. What is being done to make this issue more discussed publicly so families like mine don't feel shunned?
And one thing we're attempting to do, and Debbie Dingle and I have worked together on this as well as other members, but we've co-sponsored legislation from both aspects as well, to try to get at the aspect in the communities as well as in our schools, in our law enforcement agencies, labor department, the ability to understand that predominantly we're looking at people who are not criminals but are victims. That's an entire mindset difference. When we see that people who have in many cases been caught up with opioid for pain as a result of a surgery, I've had enough surgeries to know that pain pills are pushed after that. The opportunity there is to ultimately end up in a system where abuse takes place and all of a sudden a person who never thought they'd be an abuser of drugs, let alone heroin, is caught in that trap. So a number of pieces of legislation have been passed, in fact 16 bills thus far this term, dealing with all aspects of opioid heroin abuse issue, as well as other drug abuse issues, to try to get at a handle on how we train people, how we make people aware, how we work with community efforts, and also dollars and resources to go toward those issues. In fact, in just a few short weeks, Debbie Dingle and I will be doing a combined opioid heroin abuse town hall together on the line of our districts, since we share the lines together, to try to bring more conversation out about what this problem is and what communities can do in working together to achieve success in rolling it back as opposed to seeing it expand.
Congressman, this question is from Diane Tully, or her name is Tally. What are you doing to help and improve the VA system?
A lot of things. In fact, that in a bipartisan, or I would say a nonpartisan fashion, has been some of the successes that have taken place this term. In fact, one of the key bill packages we voted on, which was an appropriation package, dealing with defense, homeland security, and veterans, was passed just a week before the House adjourned for the August in-district work period, which put significant more dollars toward veterans care. We've seen, as a result of legislation already signed by the President, the average number of days for an appeal to take place for a veteran has dropped 9 days, and those veterans here understand that's a significant drop. We've also looked at more care for veterans in the area of education. We passed a bill that now makes permanent the GI Bill and takes time frame off. It's not 15 years from the time you're discharged. Now it's unlimited. I've already met veterans at a county fair last week who said, I'd heard about that. I've been wanting to go back to school to get some training. He said, I'm 53 years of age, but this will be an opportunity I thought I had lost. And so those type of things we're doing. We've increased the ability to get at, I guess the best term I'd use it, abusive Veterans Affairs employees. who are senior executive service level. And so the normal civil service rules and the way to have them discharged from their duties don't apply to them. It becomes almost impossible to get some of these people out, even though they're committing things like, and you can go to a new website that's up, didyouknow.gop. There's some handouts out there. Didyouknow.gop will tell you exactly what's going on in some of the bills that have passed. But one of the things that's an example on the veterans issues of being able to get a person who consistently was known to be counseling veterans at his desk while watching pornographic material on his computer screen. Now, most of us would say, common sense would say that person should be removed from his position as a counselor at a Veterans Affairs facility fairly easily. It wasn't. With this legislation that was adopted and signed into law, we'll be able to get at that. If it was your question. If it was your question.
Congressman, the next written question here is from Chris Justice. The question is, you have shown with your votes, and I should say we have many variations on this one, you have shown with your votes and comments that you want to cut Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. Which one do you want to cut the most?
And when did I stop being my wife? Is that the next question? Let me tell you, I have never said that I would do anything except repair Social Security, keep the promise, and that Medicare as well. A promise made is a promise to be kept. I'm 66, I'm on Medicare. I expect the promise to be kept. I also know in reality that Medicare has been in deficit since 2010. Deficit since 2010. If we neglect to understand what that means, that only means the old expression, we whistle past the graveyard, with the thing melting down and not doing anything about it. The same with Social Security. A promise made to be kept. It is the surest, it is the most complete definition of entitlement. We are entitled to receive what we paid for. Now involuntarily. It's a tax. Didn't have a choice all my years to pay for Social Security on the FICA, as I'm paying now. But it's still an entitlement. So we have to come together and decide how we're going to keep those promises to those people on Social Security or soon to be on Social Security, those people on Medicare or those soon to be on Medicare. But we also have to understand for those employees, maybe some who aren't even in the job market yet, younger people, what are we going to do for them so they have something down the road? Can we fix Social Security and Medicare so it'll be available for them? Or is there a better approach to take? Now, by even mentioning that, some of you will say that I'm detracting from Social Security and Medicare. And that's absolutely false. That's being responsible and common sense and saying we have to do what will work best. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when he offered Social Security, never intended it to carry on all of the items that it carries on now. And for that reason, we have the challenge of keeping up. We also have the situation where Congress, in an undisciplined fashion for many years, robbed from the Social Security Trust Fund. That's why I have legislation that I've introduced, and hopefully this term we have a president now who will sign it if it goes to his desk. That puts a lockbox around Social Security that can only be used for Social Security purposes or Medicare.
That was my question.
If that was your question, what is your added comment?
My question is, I assume from your comments that you want to cut Medicaid, which affects most of my patients because I'm looking at your.
I do not want to cut Medicaid for Medicaid recipients that meet the qualifications of Medicaid recipients. We're talking only Medicaid expansion that we're looking at. That was not Medicaid until Obamacare. So bottom line is, we have to continue.
My patients rely on that. My patients rely on that. You're funding the children's chances too. You can't hurt the parents without hurting the children.
Ma'am, I do want to remind you that the rules here, which we're asking everybody to follow, include non-interrupting, disrupting, or interfering with the conduct of the meeting.
She was responding to her question.
That's fine, that's fine, that's fine. I'm glad she spoke. I know what she's thinking. Bottom line is, we want to make sure that there are less people who need Medicaid in the future. And that Medicaid is for people who I'm sorry that you don't think there are ways that people can have better opportunities for income, have more security in their jobs, have the opportunity to advance to the middle class. I'm sorry that the last 8 years we've destroyed the middle class to a great degree, and we've given more need for social assistance. And so bottom line is, we want to make sure that people who have genuine needs, through no fault of their own, continue to have a safety net that cares for them.
Children's fault for being poor to those parents?
Not at
Is that
all.
what you're saying?
Not at all.
You want to put Medicaid for children?
I do not. I do not. Those are words that you're putting in my mouth.
That's your response? So bad for them.
Kids, I take care of my kids.
Okay, folks, come on. Okay. I know there's strong emotion around these issues. I understand that. But there are at least two sides and probably more. And frankly, we're not going to change each other's position, most likely, for the most part, by shouting at each other. And that's again why we try to do this, and it's worked best to get as many questions addressed and comments addressed through this route. So go ahead, Andrew.
Congressman, the next question is from Sean Briggs. What are you doing to prevent North Korea from attacking the U.S. and developing nuclear weapons?
Well, I mean, we have a setting there where you have a dictator who's willing to hurt his own people. And if you've been to the DMZ, as I have, and stared across the line at a denuded countryside with trees that have been cut down off of the mountainsides and the hillsides and used to heat food and heat their homes, and where you have satellite pictures showing basically one night light on, that's at the town square, lighting up the statue of the predecessor, you'll know that you have a person who's willing to do whatever it takes to build up his military, which is the largest army in the world right now. Thankfully, not the best prepared military in the world. But he's moving forward. And thankfully now we have a world effort, including China as of today, and Russia, who are standing up with the, I guess the plan we put forward a week and a half ago. We stood up in Congress, and the president ultimately signed that the sanctions on North Korea, Russia, and Iran would continue. And expectations were for the rest of our world allies to do the same thing. And thankfully, they're doing that. Now, will that stop Sun Un from continuing to build up his nuclear capabilities? Maybe not. Maybe not. But anything we can do to keep that nuclear threat from being carried out and from forcing us to respond in a military way, I think is a valuable tool. So when you have the UN, the world community now lining up and saying we're resolved on this issue, including China, South Korea reminding us that anything that we do has tremendous impact on South Korea, and so be careful. And I met with South Koreans, in fact, just this past weekend. We need to keep that in mind as well. And we certainly wish the best for the medical personnel in the back right now and the individual in need. And any of you who believe in prayer, pray as well. Okay? Next question.
So this one is from Bill Taylor. The question is, does anything bipartisan still happen, or is it all fighting all the time? Please get to work.
I'm just going to assume you're talking to the Senate with those clapping. Because in the House, you'll be pleased to know, there's a lot of bipartisan work that get done, including that sanction bill, including opioid, heroin abuse legislation, including now, we're finding out on the comprehensive tax reform legislation, that Democrats are coming to table, and I think they're hearing from their constituents back home that we want a comprehensive tax reform. We're delighted to see that. On educational issues, we've had bipartisan effort and successes. We have the Skills Act that was passed. The Skills Act that gives more dollars back to the local community schools, to the states, and even to associations of job providers for training like apprenticeship programs, IT programs, STEM programs, and did away with over half of the federal job training programs and put those dollars back to the states. That was done in a bipartisan fashion, and President Obama signed it. We had infrastructure improvements that have gone through. Last year, ultimately, was able to get through the Highway Trust Fund Restoration Act, a 5-year trust fund. And a lot of the reason why you're seeing all of the orange cones and markers out there with construction going on is because our local communities and our states and our county road commissions have at least the assurance in a 5-year plan of the dollars that are coming. So those things have been done. Debbie Dingle and I worked on a number of pieces of legislation. Dan Kilding and I worked on an educational piece, giving more opportunity to save for college education. He co-sponsored my bill. I've co-sponsored their bills. A lot of that's taking place. GLRI, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. There's a Great Lakes caucus that I'm a part of, but this particular Michigan delegation, Republicans and Democrats, have worked together on that. And we have the full funding restored in our budget that's coming out of the House when we get back for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. Last week, I introduced legislation, and Tim Ryan, not Paul Ryan, Tim Ryan, Democrat from Youngstown, Ohio, was my prime co-sponsor, which takes our MEEP plan here in Michigan, which has really established a pattern that we want to see followed in other states for how we take care of our water resources in a voluntary fashion, especially for the ag community. And so Tim Ryan and I introduced that legislation that will put that forward and encourage states, Ohio, all of the surrounding Great Lakes states, but other states as well, to use that approach, which really is working. And our ag community has gotten into it big time. So there is bipartisan, nonpartisan work going, and a lot being accomplished. Historically, this House of Representatives has passed more pieces of legislation than any House since the Korean War. President Trump has signed more legislation in the first 100 days more legislation since Reagan. And so if you ask about things getting done, and that was a question, I don't expect you all to agree with that.
But do you think this legislation?
But the legislation has been valuable, and you just have to look at some of the economic factors. Stock market's doing pretty well, folks. But more importantly,
Thanks, Obama.
The unemployment rate is down in historic proportions. When I walk around this community, and I'll be going right after this to another meeting where I'll be meeting with individual citizens and job providers, I'm going to find the same optimism. Met with a large corporation in Lansing yesterday after town hall in Delta, Magna Corporation, gangbusters. The opportunities, though, are being held back a bit because they don't have the trained workforce. And so they're stepping up, along with what we've done with the Skills Act, to begin training people for the jobs of the real world that provide not only living wages, but wages that move them into the. Please, let's work together here, folks. Okay.
One meeting at a time, as my old friend
Yeah,
Ken
one-
Fletcher used to say. One meeting at a
One
time.
meeting at a time. That's a good point of view. So anyway, again, this is a diverse group here. Understand that. Every town hall meeting I'm in is a diverse group. That's why I'm hoarse. But bottom line is, we're still Americans. This is the process we move forward in. The election was held in November. I'm glad it turned out the way it did. Some of you aren't. I know that. I experienced that for the last 8 years. I wasn't happy with how it turned out for the last 2 elections, but we still worked with the president.
No, you didn't. No, you did not.
And thankfully, the president worked with us in a number of cases, and I've given those examples already, how we move forward in construction, in education, in road building, together, in healthcare issues outside of the Affordable Care Act, which is melting down. So now the opportunity is to make things work. Next question.
Congressman, this question is from Kim Aiken, and we have, again, a handful of the same or very similar question. You have been quoted praising the efforts and actions of the Tea Party, yet you spoke out yesterday saying that those in the resist movement are obstructionists. Are citizen activists only legitimate when they agree with you?
No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I wouldn't be here if I believed that. The problem with the resist movement is that that's all they offer. Just pure resistance. Just pure stopping. The Tea Party was a different. They offered options.
Oh my.
And so the bottom line is, what we hear in Washington, what we hear in your letters, is pure resist. But that's why we're still here with this town hall. And that's why we're glad to have seen a number of you in the multiple town halls already. And we'll keep doing them, coming to a town near you. Next. Well, if you were at Adrian, you were there on a Saturday.
One.
And it was on a Saturday.
Congressman, the next question is from Suzanne Rogers. What is the proper balance between encouraging our kids to get a 4-year degree versus a 2-year degree in the trades?
Find their sweet spot. As I've talked to parents, I've said, hey, listen, don't succumb to the pressure that just because the kids down the street are going to a 4-year institution, that means that your child needs to go to a 4-year institution. What do they do best? What turns their crank? What excites them? What's their aptitude for? What opportunities have you given them to see? And I said this to my kids, as my dad said it to me, who was a machinist tool and die maker. Wanted us to have a college education that he lost out during the Depression, but he said, if you don't go that direction, get a trade. You'll always have a job. It was true for him. It allowed him to go from nothing to middle class and to take care of his twin sons and take care of his wife to her dying day by just doing the things that having the job enabled him to do. So I'd say, listen, take a look at it. If you haven't been to a manufacturing site in a while, you ought to go there. It's an amazing difference from the dark, oily, smoke-filled, sometimes dangerous settings where my dad worked, or U.S. Steel Southworks where I worked out of high school, and I look back on it now and I wonder what physical problem will I have ultimately in my life because of some of the issues I wasn't protected from at number 2 electric furnace. But now there's difference, and the creativity, the computer usage, the robotics, all of the things that are in a modern workplace are special. So give them the chance, and don't succumb to the fact of a lot of push to get people into the seats at the 4-year institutions, at least for that first year, and then ultimately come out with a tuition, with a student loan debt that stunts the opportunity for the future, and they find out that's not what I wanted to do anyway. Every kid's different. All 3 of my kids were different, very different from each other. One's a Pulitzer nominated, I think soon to be twice, journalist. Another one's a dental hygienist with a bachelor's degree in applied science, who's a missionary in Kampala, Uganda, has been there for 13 years. Another one is working in the trades area. All 3 were different. Now, that's my only answer. And that's why the Skills Act is something that we're pushing, to give more opportunity for dollars to go that direction and give the choices to kids to get into the trades area, and not only see 4-year institutions. Not downing 4-year institutions either. But America works on a whole cross spectrum of people doing the jobs where they feel the best about getting up each morning and going to the gym. I will answer the questions as I answer the questions. Yes, go on.
Congressman, the next question is from James McKinnon. Given the crisis that Lake Erie faces and algae blooms, what are you doing to protect the Great Lakes?
Well, I think I answered that, so I'll say GLRI. The bill that Tim Ryan and I put out, and continue efforts to make sure the EPA does what it's supposed to do, and not what we've seen in past years, taking on projects that allow them to miss out, along with other governmental entities in Flint. Just a week and a half ago, on the Energy and Commerce Committee, in which I sit, we passed significant legislation for Clean Water, Drinking Water Act. That will go to the House floor probably almost as soon as we get back. So those are just some of the things that we're doing.
Congressman, this question is from John Boblet. As a Christian pastor, do you subscribe to serving the least of us and supporting the Affordable Care Act that provides health insurance for the least of us?
I support serving the least of us. But I support serving in a way that it actually serves the least of us. The Affordable Care Act isn't doing that, folks. The premiums, on average, have increased this past year by 105%. Well, I'm glad yours hasn't. On average, and that's not my numbers, 105%. The cost of premium for a family has increased during that same period of time, not decreased, as President Obama said, by $2,500 per family. It's increased just under $3,000 per family.
Whose numbers are they?
Insurance companies like Aetna, Humana, and United Healthcare have now all three of those. The largest insurance providers in the country have said by 2018 they are totally out of the Obamacare market. They will not be providing exchanges. So, bottom line is, this is melting down. And when you have people of health insurance policies who come to my town hall meetings, who come to my offices, who send their letters, who show the pictures, they have the insurance card, they have the insurance premium, but when they go to use it, they have to get through their first $7,000 to $10,000 out of pocket before they can have dime one from their insurance plan. When they go to get their prescription drugs, they found that exponential increases for their drugs. And so bottom line, folks, whether you will accept it or not, for the general public, it has melted down. And we are on a rescue mission for the least of us to do.
Okay, the next question is from John Paul.
That was my question, I have a follow-up.
Well, you're like, you didn't pause even before you asked the question.
Well, I tried. The Affordable Care Act has been wonderful for my daughter. Each year, I pay her premium. Each year, the cost has gone down and the benefits have gone up. But I know that it still needs to be improved. Prior to that, she paid $630 a month copay with her employer's program. You know, that was her copay with her employer, $630 a month, and she came to me and said, I can't afford this anymore. I said, well, let's explore the Affordable
So
Care Act.
she's under 26?
She's over 26, okay. Well, I pay her premium because she doesn't make enough money to make, she wouldn't get it if I didn't pay for it.
But it's her policy.
It's her policy, I pay the premium. Okay, so, $630 a month is how much she had to pay her employer for her employer-supported insurance policy. Now I pay $213 a month. That's a pretty good deal.
Share that around with other people then.
I have.
Make sure you get that to them. That's great. Good.
It works for me and it works for so many.
And we can say very clearly that there are people in the United States that are better off now than before.
Yes.
But that is a minority of people. If it weren't a minority of people, we wouldn't be going through all this.
Congressman, the next question is from John Paul. I am confused by the budget process. What does sequester omnibus all mean? Will we have a federal budget or not?
Well, I'm confused by the budget process at times as well. It is convoluted. Unlike in the state legislature, where you have an appropriations committee that puts a budget together, and the various component parts comes to the committee, it's put into one budget. It's sent to the floor and you vote on that budget. You may offer amendments on the floor. In this case, you have 12 specific budget areas. They are worked out in appropriations committee. They generally come to the floor, or at least they're supposed to come to the floor, one budget bill at a time, addressed on the floor in regular order with amendment process, and then passed one at a time to the Senate, who then work on it the same way, ultimately coming back to a conference committee. If there's differences, worked it out, send to the president. For the past almost a decade, we haven't been able to get that done. And so it's gone to omnibuses, where you put all of them together that you can, and try to pass it as one bill, or you do cromnibuses, which are multiple budget years, or minibuses, which are just a few. You had sequestration that President Obama threatened if we didn't bump up taxes. And so he said, we're not going to do that, and we're not going to expend more, because right now we're at that time approaching $18 trillion in debt. Now we're almost $20 trillion in debt. And we said, we're not going to do that. And he said, so I'll sequester, which meant cuts across the board in every budget area, but especially in defense. We didn't back down, because frankly, we can't keep deficit spending and expect to give anything of value to our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids. We have to start by stopping that abusive spending. So in 2011, Senator Patty Murray, a Democrat, and then Representative Paul Ryan, a Republican, worked out the Ryan-Murray plan, which established a spending level at 2011 levels, where we're still at today for the discretionary area of the budget. 40% of our total budget is discretionary. So that means unless we have a president who's willing to sign our reforms of the mandatory area of the budget, we can't touch that. Obamacare is part of the mandatory area of the budget. Social Security, Medicare, et cetera, is mandatory. But we can't do reforms there either to make sure that we don't melt down. So that's 60% stays out there. And so for the past, since 2011, we have worked through minibuses, omnibuses, CRs to just get through a short period of time, which are called cromnibuses, to get through the process to at least keep the lights on and keep our government open. Finally, we have a president who says, I will sign reforms in the total budget if you get it to me. That includes the mandatory as well as discretionary. So we don't have to deal with only the fact that since 2011 we've kept the discretionary in line. We've stopped the deficit spending in the discretionary area, but the mandatory areas continue to be in deficit and produce right now almost a $20 trillion debt. That's an issue of morality, of what we pass on to our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. I don't think it's appropriate to not deal with that. And so hopefully, with the new budget approach, we've taken 4 budget bills and passed them. And come back, the other 8 are up for a vote. They're out of committee already. And we'll see what happens. I think we'll get out of the House. We'll see if the Senate is willing to work with us.
Can you clarify what those 12 budget areas are and which ones have?
The 4 that have passed have been in Homeland Security and Defense areas. Pardon? Increases, yes, increases. Because the one area that was under sequestration to the very last was our military defense capabilities. And that's not the way it should be. The one responsibility we do have as member of Congress is to defend and protect our citizens against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. So it's about time that we bumped up our military spending, which has been depleted. Folks, just a few weeks ago, you remember that aircraft went down with 16 of our military, 15 Marines and 1 sailor, in a 60-plus-year-old plane. There are 74% of the Marine fighter planes right now are out of commission. 74%. Can't fly. Why? Because of lack of parts and maintenance. Now that crosses all the spectrum. Now, I'm taking seriously when you have threats from outside like we have with North Korea and others, that we had better be up to speed. And it's about time we do it. Next question.
Congressman, this question is from Stacy Walls. It is, thank you for being here. Why did it take you so long to come to the Dexter area?
Well, it wasn't fear, that's for sure. I met with some of you outside of the church here in the area as well.
Okay, so that 10 minutes counts as a total?
It's not fear. It's the fact that we schedule. We've gone to communities in Washtenaw County. We have 7 counties. I hope you understand that. There's 7 counties that we have. There are a lot of communities. And little Hudson, who we'll be with tomorrow down in Lenawee County, deserves the opportunity. That gives opportunity for Hillsdale residents to come. We do proximities, so we can get more people at locations closer to them. Luna Pier, some would say, why did you go to Luna Pier? Well, it's in my district. It's Monroe County, South Monroe County. Sometimes South Monroe County thinks that they're not considered South Monroe County, but rather Ohio. I consider them Monroe County. So that's the reasons we do that. And I hope that you're glad I'm here. And we'll be back sometime. But we're not coming here every day. Sometime we'll come in the morning, sometime we'll come at night, sometime we'll be on Saturday, sometime. Stay tuned. We'll be glad to see you.
Congressman, this question is from Sam Collier. States like California, Colorado, Vermont looked at single-payer health care and found they couldn't afford it. Why do people think single-payer will work?
I don't know. Next question.
Oh my God.
I don't know. The rest of the world. I don't know. It doesn't work anyplace else.
Everywhere else.
It doesn't work anyplace else unless you're healthy. And it's interesting that, and I don't have the poster here. I wish I had the poster here of Jerry Brown's comments about single payer. Jerry Brown, and not a noted conservative, Jerry Brown said to his legislature, if you pass single payer, I'll veto it. And I'll veto it because it'll cost us $400 billion. That was Jerry Brown saying it. It's not Tim Walberg. Jerry Brown saying that. And he further went on to say, $400 billion cost for single payer would force us to raise taxes by at least $200 billion.
That's not true.
And our entire budget, annual budget, is $124 billion. So most people looking at those numbers would say, oops, we got a problem with single payer. And so that's why I can't support it.
How about all of Europe?
Congressman, the next question is from Molly Kraus-Steinmetz. In 1970, what year did you get out of college, Congressman Walberg? 75 or 73?
73.
Okay, I think this says in
I'm
1973.
undergrad.
Okay. In 1973, the year you graduated college, a minimum wage summer job was enough to pay for a year of tuition. Today, a student would have to work 35-hour week year-round to afford tuition. You support raising the minimum wage so that hard-working young people can get ahead in life and get an education.
Well, if you want to have less young people employed, let's do that. Let's do that. Because the McDonald's, the car washes, the convenience stores, the Home Depots, the Lowe's, etc., that would be the normal places for summer jobs, for teenagers, for college students. Back in my day, I could work at U.S. Steel. That was big pay. But the rest of my jobs are at those type of workplaces. Full-service gas stations, delivering pianos and organs, those type of things. The more difficulty you make for the small business person to hire summer employment, and the more difficulty you make for senior citizens to continue on a fixed income, and then have to take those jobs that generally were cared for by those students. You won't have students with the ability to go to college any more than now, and probably less. Bottom line is, I think we need to promote competition education. That's why I like the idea of now going to trades education, internships, apprenticeship programs, giving competition to four-year institutions. The online education opportunities are expanding daily with extreme quality for those young people that it works for. That in turn gives more choice, more competition, and more opportunity.
But when you have competition, you have winners and losers. And if you put competition in education, kids will lose.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think so. I had a competition.
You are not a teacher.
My undergrad degree is in education. My mother was a public school teacher. I majored in biology and minored in geology university. My undergrad degree ultimately was in education. So bottom line is, if you believe, and this wasn't your question, but I'm going to respond to that. When you say competition reduces quality, you've not been living in America.
No, sir, that's all
Competition always.
I said in education, if you have competition in education, there will be winners and losers.
Oh, you bet.
I want all kids to win. And if you have competition in education, there will be
If you have competition in education, you will have winners.
Yeah, but
Why will you have it?
as well.
Why will you have it?
We cannot afford to let any child lose in education.
I agree with you.
We can,
That's why you need competition. That's why you need competition. I can tell you, with competition.
Okay.
I'd like to get back to the question.
The next
of how
question.
people like
This was her question.
pay for college. If we choose to go to a four-year university, how do we pay for it when minimum wage is so low?
Okay. Bottom line is, let's grow the economy. Let's grow the economy so there are more opportunities for students to be employed, so they can pay to go to school. Let's expand the choice. Let's expand competition in higher education.
But if there are
There's a
more
reason.
jobs, the jobs don't pay enough for college. How does that help?
Well, that's why we grow the economy. Don't flounder the job providers. Don't flounder them with unnecessary regulation.
So
Unnecessary.
they'll pay more wages
Don't-
because they want to?
They'll pay because they have it. If they have competition, they have to pay. if they're
No,
good
trickle down
employees.
doesn't work.
And in the real world, that's how it works. They know that if they need people, they're going to have to pay them.
Then why don't they pay enough now?
They pay
Enough.
for the people that they can afford. And when you put mandates on small businesses that normally employed students and gave them a wage that would help pay them for schools, and you take those out of the marketplace and give those to senior citizens or kiosks.
Wait, so you're blaming this on senior citizens?
No, I'm not blaming on senior citizens. Don't put the words that way.
That senior citizens
No.
are paying.
Bottom line, grow the economy, the students will have the jobs. Put the competition back into higher education, and you'll have more schools with more choices, and
Lower tuition then?
schools will lower tuition. We're seeing that happen in certain institutions. Are lowering tuition so they get people in.
So certain people don't have.
Let's go to the next question. I think we beat that one to death.
Congressman, the next question is from Catherine Keeble, and there are a handful of questions on here, a couple of which have already been asked, but the one that is not is, explain your stance on Planned Parenthood.
I'm pro-life. Planned Parenthood is pro-abortion.
No. They prevent abortion.
Somehow I realize there have been disagree signs that go up.
Are you pro-cancer?
The majority of work that Planned Parenthood does, under questioning, Cecile Richards had to admit, was abortion.
That's not true.
Well, talk to Cecile Richards on that. bottom line is, there is no reason we pay for an abortion entity to carry on their main function, and that being abortion.
That's not true. The Hyde Amendment prevents that.
If they truly want to,
Yes, that's absolutely ridiculous.
But on your website, the fact that a single federal dollar goes to pay for an abortion.
Hyde Amendment prevents
that
that.
is true. He just stated the truth. As of now, there is not a single dollar that goes to pay for abortion. Why?
Exactly.
Because the Hatch Act is permanent. The Hyde Act is permanent. It's there. But until Planned Parenthood devolves from being an abortion provider, the number one abortion provider in the nation, in fact in the world,
It's legal.
it will not get, it's legal. It's legal, but the law says no funding goes.
It doesn't. Funding doesn't go to it, and it's legal.
You asked me to respond to where I stand on Planned Parenthood, so you just got it. Let's go to the next question.
Congressman, the next question is from Bob Frazier. Because you have done coursework in land management, could you apply the same principles to global land management? Question is from Bob Frazier. Because you have done coursework in land management, could you apply the same principles to global land management?
I would hope so. I would hope so. We're to be good stewards of the resources we have, but we're to use the resources. They're not just meant to be left there. And so that's why I believe that the issue of Great Lakes restoration is important. That's why I've supported that. That's why I believe that invasive species is a problem. And that's why we pushed for the Logan Road study to be completed, which as of yesterday, it has been. And now we can work on that. That's why we pushed the meat program and tried to get it out to other states to use the same process. Of course. So, I don't know how else I can answer it other than the fact that, yeah, it certainly can be used. Was that your question?
It was.
Okay.
So global climate change is more solid science than, say, tectonic plates or the relationship between tobacco and cancer and heart disease. And yet you say.
Who says?
Scientists.
Not degree in religious education. It's people that have scientists in the field.
Some of them. Beyond the relationship of tobacco to cancer?
Yes.
I'd like to see that.
Yes. But you say, okay, I'll handle land, but when it's global change, let God do it. That doesn't make sense.
No, I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that.
I have the video.
Well, yeah. But you didn't say the full
I
statement.
hope your God has mercy
I said,
on your soul.
as a Christian, I believe
I
God
hope
created
your
this
God has
universe,
mercy on your soul.
and that God cares for this universe, and He expects us to be good stewards. And I want to be a good steward of that resource. But I believe we're not going to destroy it without His involvement in it as well. I don't believe that any of us are greater than God or care more about this universe than He does. And as a Christian, I believe that is an important part of my Christianity in caring for the resources that He's blessed me with. And we'll continue to do that. I believe in one God. That's good.
The next question is from F. Khan. Should the Congress fix Obamacare or move on to other legislation, e.g. tax reform?
We can walk and chew gum. Is that really funny? I don't want to. We can walk and chew gum. We can do multiple things. At least in the House we can. And we're going to keep doing that. But we expect the Senate to do as well. And so I expect the senators to come back and continue working on the repeal and replacement of Obamacare. I expect them to do that. And we're going to work on tax reform. We're going to work on the budget. We're going to work on clean water issues. We're going to continue to do that in the House. For that reason, I'm glad that I sit on Energy and Commerce Committee, because we have a plethora of issues that we need to address, and we're going to keep doing it. But the American people said in November, they wanted to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. They said that they said that they wanted to repeal and replace Dodd-Frank. They said that they wanted us to have tax reform. They said they wanted us to secure the borders. Elections have consequences, and whether you approve the outcome or not, that's what happened, folks. And bottom line is we're working with it.
American people, the Electoral College got him there.
Congressman, the next question is from Julie.
My question was that given the number of legislative days that you have in the year, given the sound of things that are normal executive like budget, like that seems, how much time are you going to devote in again trying to fix the Obamacare and what we want, other important issues? You should try to fix Obamacare and try to repeal it, because you've tried it so many times, and you're wasting the Congress's time.
Well, I appreciate that. That's your opinion. I believe the people asked us to replace Obamacare. And so we're going to keep doing that. We did that in the House. We had a referendum. It happened in November. Sir, we've done it. We expect the Senate to do it now. We're moving on to other things.
Well, they were smarter than the
As I
House.
mentioned to you, we have a historic number of pieces of legislation that have been passed in the House, that have been signed by the President. In fact, we're doing a lot of work that was never done before. And so we're going to continue doing that. But that doesn't relinquish us from keeping our promises. We passed Dodd-Frank repeal and replace. The Senate has to do it. We passed Kate law. Kate's law is over in the Senate. We expect them to work on that as well. So, bottom line, I'm just illustrating for you, sir, that we can do more things than one at a time. But we are still committed to doing what we told the people we would do, and they put us in majority to do. Next question.
Congressman, I understand we only have time for one more. So this is one that was submitted several times. I'm really sorry if I get this wrong. I think it's Julie Shoemaker. Does anybody want to correct me? Okay, we're going to go with Julie Shoemaker. If President Trump fires Attorney General Sessions, Assistant Attorney General Rosenstein, and Special Counsel Mueller in an attempt to stop the Russia investigation, how will you respond? Again, there's a handful of variations on this question as well.
Has he said he was going to do that?
Yes.
Yes.
No, he hasn't.
If he
No,
does.
he hasn't. No, he hasn't. Fake news has said that, but he hasn't said that. I thought that'd get a response. I thought that'd get a response. Hey, I don't deal in hypotheticals. Right now, the Mueller investigation is going on. There's been no indication from the president that he's stopping the grand jury. It's moving forward. Members of his family have agreed to meet in front of them and testify in front of them. So until anything changes, we'll just let it work out. Next question.
My question, isn't there bipartisan effort to put things in
That's the
place
third
to
time
make
he's
sure
done
that
it.
it doesn't? And I know you're saying it's a hypothetical, but other people don't feel that way, and they're already moving forward to make sure that it doesn't.
Well, if Lindsey Graham wants to put something forward like that, Lindsey Graham will move it forward. But bottom line is we feel the system is working as it should. The committees are meeting. The hearings are being held. The grand jury has been convened. The subpoenas have been listed.
The president is trying to undermine every person that's in place.
We haven't seen that. Is Mueller still in place? Is Mueller still in place?
Comey was fired, those are real things that happen, not hypothetical.
Is Mueller still in place?
For now.
Okay, let's go next question.
Okay.
Excuse me.
And I understand.
Excuse me, that was my question, and could you?
I thought that was her question.
No,
We have several.
Yeah, I'm Julie Shoemaker, that was my question.
Okay.
So if President Trump moves to, or actually fires, special counsel Mueller, how will you respond?
Fires him on the basis of what?
Any,
No. I don't make comments, I have to live with those comments later on, right? All on video?
President Trump has been clearly, through various tweets and things he's said, has both threatened Attorney General Sessions. He's also talked about firing Special Prosecutor Mueller. What will you and what will your colleagues do if he moves in that direction?
If he fires, for what reason?
And the
No.
To end the investigation.
To end the investigation because Mueller isn't carrying it out according to law?
No. Because he's working.
No, I gotta know. I gotta know.
No.
I gotta know.
You won't know if they're.
No, we won't know. Because it will be required to be told whether he has committed a violation of his duties, whether he has crossed the law.
If he has not crossed any laws.
I can't answer a hypothetical. I answered this morning, if the president violates the law or his oath of office, I would support impeachment.
that's not what you said this morning.
So that's what we deal with. We have a constitution, we have law. And regardless of my opinions, I was asked numerous times to work to impeach Barack Obama. Some of you were in my town hall meetings.
For what?
Some of you were in my town hall meetings, and I said to the people who were on the other side of you, asking me to impeach Barack Obama, I said, I can't do that. You gotta show me the reason for. Was there a violation of law? Was there malfeasance, nonfeasance? And so bottom line, you never push for impeachment.
Okay, thanks very much for your time. It's 3 o'clock. Thank you, Congressman Wahlberg, for coming by.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you back again.